Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Ullmann Japhet with SanAntonioSports. I'm a board member.
And I'm Jenny Carnes, President and CEO of SanAntonioSports.
We're so glad to have you join us for Game On, our podcast celebrating San Antonio Sports' 40th anniversary. And the 40th anniversary is come and gone. So this is our real wrap up. And it's just going to be, instead of having a wonderful Olympian or sports mogul in with us, it's just you and me. We're going to wrap it up.
I hope that's okay.
Yeah, I hope.
It's a great way to finish.
Yeah, we just wanted to have a conversation and to thank everybody for tuning in for all of the various podcasts that we've done over the course of the year. But just, favorite moments. I guess that's the easiest way to dive into this.
Well,
right?
I will start by just saying 2024 was a great year for San Antonio Sports. And thank you for pushing me to do this podcast. The last time we really celebrated a big year for our organization was our 25th. And we put together a coffee table book that took you about a year to put together and write. Right. And we wanted to do something that was a little more current and memorialize our history and our 2024 year, our 40th anniversary, through conversations with some incredible guests. So thank you for pushing me to do this. I'm so
glad you said yes.
Never have thought about doing this before. It's out of my comfort zone, but it's been a fun year. We've had some incredible guests. And if you ask me what my favorite moment has been, I can't. I can't give you that answer.
I know. I think, when we started it off, rightly so, with one of the founders of San Antonio Sports, with George Block. George is just great. He's always a good soundbite. He's always been my go-to guy when I needed to take a complicated issue and distill it into really good plain English. I think it's the old swim coach in him. He just if you can't say it in like 3 or 4 words, then your athletes aren't going to remember it. So he's really good at that. But he just brought it all from the past to, from 1984, when this fledgling group of sports guys saw a vision for making San Antonio a true sports destination and just started stumbling through it and making it happen. I thought that was really great. Of course, and as George does, he made us tear up, which he always does.
Always does. I think, as we went about the year of trying to talk about who we would invite to join us in this podcast, you and I both knew George had to be the first guest. Yeah. As we, one of the godfathers of San Antonio sports, on the board for 39 years. He just finally retired and rolled off last year, but he's still here. He's still texting me. He's still calling me. You need to think about this. You need to meet this person. You need to work on iPlay Pipeline. And he always makes you tear up.
Yeah.
Because he tears up first.
Yes.
And that's how passionate he is about sports and youth in this community, as a coach, as a board member, as a founder of San Antonio Sports. And there's nobody better.
We've had I think one of the great strengths of San Antonio Sports is its consistency of leadership. And George, of course, is a perfect example of that. But we've had such good people in place, and we had a few of them on the podcast. Stacy Johnson, Olympic fencer, remarkable woman, dear friend. She's still very much a part of the family, I would say. And to have her be a part of this podcast was really fantastic.
Well, again, another guest that we didn't have to even think about. Yeah. We knew we had to have Stacy on as a former Olympian, as a former board member, as really the person outside of George Block that is responsible for the youth programs of San Antonio Sports, who really launched Dreams for Youth, so many years ago for San Antonio Sports, and cared so much about kids learning non-traditional sports outside of what we think about every day.
Football, basketball.
Yeah, right. All of those things. And was the conduit between San Antonio and the Olympics and the USOC, and having her on talking about her own experience about being on the 1980 Olympic team that had to boycott. She didn't she didn't get to weigh in on that. And she'd been training, and, you know, who knows, she could have come home with a gold medal that year. But it was about something so much bigger than just the athletes of the United States that year. And hearing that firsthand was awesome.
Yeah, I know. She's got a great story. And all of the things that we're talking about, I'd encourage folks to go back and listen to the podcast. The links are there. It's really, they're really great. But she was, you know, very early on, a woman in sport. And we had other strong women in sport on the podcast too. Andrea Williams, it's just remarkable. Plus, she's fun. And we may or may not have had actual mimosas in our cups that morning because it was right after Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
right?
that was a fun one because it was early morning, the day after our Hall of Fame induction back in May. And as an inductee, very deserving inductee representing San Antonio for so many years through not only her high school and collegiate performances as a volleyball, basketball athlete, but what she's done in her career. So it was fun to really, you know, talk to her the day after and learn from her what that meant to be inducted into the San Antonio Sports Hall of Fame. And we had a little champagne that morning.
Andrea is has become a good friend too to San Antonio Sports, and she's fantastic. Utah Jazz, and now she's the director of athletics for
Chicago, Illinois.
Yes, exactly.
But she was the number 2 at the college football playoff championship before going to the Utah Jazz, and just really has set the standard for women in the national sports industry here. And somebody I look up to, and I tell her all the time, why don't you come home and take my job?
Not yet. You know, and then I think about like Rose Monday, Olympic track and field coach. She was an elite athlete herself, not an Olympian, but really got to the Olympics through the coaching side of things, and then also through the political side within the sport of USA Track and Field, and was the head coach for women for the Tokyo Games, and it remains very active with USA Track and Field now. She was a great story. She brought along her own Olympian that she was coaching.
One of the coolest moments.
Yeah.
I mean, again, another San Antonio Sports Hall of Famer that has represented San Antonio so well on an international stage, but to be able to talk to her, and you and I have known her for so many years and love her career and what she's done for sports, but to sit with her and her athlete,
Alana,
yes, that was going on to compete in the Olympics this past summer, and how she got there was just hearing that firsthand.
You got to go back and watch that one because it's a crazy story. It's how Alana got to the Olympics and how it's just fun. It's really great. And then I think, our very own, sometimes we forget how remarkable an athlete he was, but Ross Davis, Paralympian, on staff at San Antonio Sports for many, many years, now living in Colorado, and we miss him terribly. But, he's been such a voice for parasport and for Paralympians and adaptive athletics, and just to have him here as a guest, and not like doing the graphics for it or something, but as our guest to talk about the opportunities that are available now that he didn't encourage. But and the thread through all of these folks, because we asked it was the last question we asked every time was, what does the power of sport mean to you? And everyone had a poignant answer. Ross was really spot on for me. Yeah. And you and I know Ross on a different level as really good friends and as teammates for 16 years. But I think one of the things I've learned from him over the years is, look at every sport, every event from an angle of somebody that needs a different way of looking at it, an adaptive, flexible level. And Ross, he's so respected in so many
so many different areas. And I always point back to what him and I did together on NCAA championships and Final Four bids. And he was so respected at the NCAA that he was one of the first people tapped by NCAA basketball to join their facility coordination group because they wanted his perspective of how you move through a Final Four venue when you're in a wheelchair. And he was kind of the voice of the entire country on going to a major event and doing it in a different way. And I'm a huge fan of Ross. And I wish we could get him back here. I know he's probably going to come back for Final Four.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Final Four. So we had some Final Four related guests on. We had Mark Klein from Populous. And I think that's a really interesting just topic. I mean, what Populous does about, they're architects, but they're architects of people movement and so much. But that was a real, and then Mark has some crazy behind the scenes stories.
Yeah, I think even after we cut the camera off, he continued to share stories. And being my background, being in operations and planning events, that is what gets me really excited, is hearing from somebody like Mark that knows everything that goes on behind the scenes of an event. That, hey, we've been working on this event for 5 or 6 years, and it's going to come down to 4 days. And fans and parents and athletes only see the 4 days, but they don't see the 5 years of what has gone into getting ready to make that a safe event, to make it a really successful event and a popular event for fans to come to. And just hearing his stories for fans that go to sporting events, even if it's just a Spurs game, or if you do a couple of big events a year, you can't imagine what goes on the planning side. And I love that perspective because that's the perspective that I understand the most.
Yeah. Well, we had also Elena Wells, who's the executive director of our local organizing committee now, with Wendy Brand, who had held that role previously. So there was kind of a back then and now conversation. You did that one. I was out of town.
Yeah. And right before that, we hosted Joanne Scott, who is the NCAA's managing director of Division I men's basketball championships. And she's a dear friend of our organization. And we've worked with her over the past 7 or 8 years preparing for Final Fours. So getting her perspective and then getting to do that locally with Elena and Wendy and myself, all having sat in that same seat as the executive director of a Final Four organizing committee for San Antonio. We had great stories to tell. We had some that we probably shouldn't have told. We will have more stories coming up shortly for the 2025 NCAA Men's Final Four. But I think my favorite thing about that podcast, and then of course interviewing Joanne, is that you've got the second most popular sporting event in the country, maybe just behind the Super Bowl and March Madness. We all know what we do for those 3.5 weeks. We don't get any work done. We're watching games on our computer screen, but that women run the men's Final Four.
Yeah, I know.
And that is a predominant theme across most host cities. And I just think that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think it's really great. Well, we did talk also with some cool coaches. I mean, Jeff Traylor. Come on. I mean, UTSA football coach. Amazing.
You and I didn't even need to be here for that.
Really,
Jeff could have just
let him go. He's got great stories to tell. And I thought he did a stellar job explaining the implications of NIL to the UTSA football team, athletics in general. I mean, there's some big issues and some big hurdles that they've got to get through. And Jeff really spelled it out well.
And where that goes from here in a market like San Antonio that's smaller, that doesn't have as much of the Fortune 500 corporate dollars to spend. And while UTSA and the Roadrunner football program has been outstanding over the last 5 years, they cannot compete with UT, with Alabama, with Clemson, with Georgia. I mean, I'll keep going down the list, top 10. You cannot compete with those schools in terms of NIL dollars right now. So how does San Antonio react to that? How does UTSA athletics react to that? And Jeff having to do that as the head coach. Oh my gosh. I mean, that might be one of the hardest jobs in San Antonio outside of city manager.
I can't imagine the phone calls he has to take and and conversations he has to have with athletes, hard conversations.
Well, when you've got bigger schools that are trying to pick off his athletes going into their senior year with offers that we just cannot counter in San Antonio. We can't.
I know. It's crazy. And we talked to some of San Antonio favorites from years gone by. Tim Dirk, who created the Coyote and actually is widely seen across professional sports as like the guy who really made mascots cool and functional and a big part of the show.
The gold standard for mascots.
He totally
for professional
is.
mascots.
And I got to do that one directly with him.
Yeah.
Tim and I've known each other. He was a tennis player at Trinity University where I went to school. He was a few years ahead of me, but Trinity's very proud of him. He's been so instrumental with the Spurs organization. I mean, the Coyote, come on. I mean, it's almost like everybody else and then the Coyote. But he's just got, he invented the T-shirt cannon. Yeah. I mean, it's just so
come
cool.
on.
It's just great. And then probably the funniest moment was with Bruce Bowen, who is always entertaining. I mean, so much fun to watch when he was playing. But I just remember asking him, so I want to get your feedback. What do you think about Wemby? And he goes, he tall.
He tall. That was his first reaction.
Yeah.
No hesitation. He tall.
It was great. Yeah. You got to go see that one. I mean, I just burst out laughing and I still do. I mean, Bruce he's a gift to this community. And I love that he, like so many other players, Tim, David,
they're still here.
They're still here very much a vital part of our community. And I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, that speaks to San Antonio, right?
And I think the future is so bright for our Spurs. And, going back to Tim, I think Tim is such a great testament to there's so much more to sport than most people even think about.
Yeah.
Again, back to Populous and the behind the scenes of making a sporting event happen, and the fans don't see any of that. But does anybody in San Antonio know that Tim Dirk was like the greatest mascot in professional sports history, and he created the T-shirt cannon? Like that's a whole career in itself. I mean, that's pretty cool.
It's pretty fascinating, and I don't ever want people to forget that. Mm-hmm. I mean, Tim's just cool. Bruce, great, great high school coach,
Treva, my good friend Treva, one of the most successful girls high school coaches in the city of San Antonio, now has transitioned to administration as the athletic director for Judson, and one of the few female athletic directors in the city of San Antonio at the high school level. She's done amazing things, created a great culture over there. But I remember having the conversation with her that day, just how she can impact young women at a moment in their lives where they probably need the most impact, right?
Yeah.
And that's my takeaway from somebody like Treva, who's doing bigger things right now, but it's the impact she had at the coaching level for her girls over the years.
Well, and while we talked basketball with Bruce, we had the Spurs, Liberty Swift and Frank Maselli in. And that was more of a behind the scenes about Spurs sports and entertainment and their evolution through time and currently where they are and what they're focused on in the community. And I thought that was really insightful too.
Yeah, great guest. We are all Spurs fans in San Antonio, and we all, I think, recognize and appreciate what SSNE does for this community outside of just, the Spurs themselves, and us loving going to the games and cheering on our Spurs, and hopefully we'll be back in the playoffs soon. Yeah. But what they do locally aligns so well to what SanAntonioSports does for youth and for parks and school venues and facilities. And so we're so aligned and need to be doing more with them. But hearing that firsthand from Frank, I love those guys, and I'm ready to go to the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
For the last 4 decades, San Antonio Sports has dared this community to dream big through the transformational power of sport. For 40 years, we've inspired youth to get in the game, motivated San Antonians to live healthy, been a force behind places to play, and hosted events that impact. As we celebrate 40 years of dreaming big, we invite you to dream big along with us. To support our mission, donate today at SanAntonioSports.org.
Well, let's kind of talk about the 40th anniversary. So this was a big milestone for San Antonio Sports. I think what a lot of folks don't know is that San Antonio Sports has always been an independent nonprofit. Sports commissions across the country tend to be functions of government or government related, and we've never been that. Now, we work very closely with the city. We work very closely with the county. We had Judge Sakai on. He was great. Told some good stories about his own belief in sport and the power of sport. He was terrific. But just kind of, what were some of the highlights of the 40th?
Well, and thank you for pointing out how we're a little bit unique with our sports commission here, that we are a standalone nonprofit, and that it is very different in the sports commission world across the United States. And we're not tied to a convention and visitors bureau. We're not funded by the city. And so I think what really sets us apart is that we're not just about bringing in big events like the Final Four and helping pump money into the hotel occupancy tax and filling hotel rooms. That's a big part of our mission.
I mean, this upcoming Final Four is expected to deliver $440
million and thousands of visitors, hundreds of thousands of visitors and thousands of hotel room nights that will come back to the local citizens through the hot tax fund. But where I think we really stand out is what we do locally for the community through our free programs with I Play After School and San Antonio Sports Activate. But 2024 was a big year for us. Not only just celebrating our 40th anniversary, but, preparing for the 5th NCAA Men's Final Four takes years and years of planning. And so right now, this is right in front of us. And we had to staff up by an additional 10 people this past year just to focus on the Final Four. We continue to do all the things that we do every day, All-Star Game football, that Valero is such a big part of. We launched our All-Star Game basketball series that now recognizes the top seniors in Bexar County and in the area.
Boys and girls.
And that was a big deal to me that we finally, got to get into co-ed All-Star recognitions, and we'll continue to grow that and expand that into other sports. We grew our I Play After School program by 2 school districts, which we're really proud of because we just want to give opportunities to kids that might not have an opportunity to play sports or play club sports. And we're trying to get San Antonio active and moving more and living healthier lifestyles and starting their mental and physical wellness journeys through San Antonio Sports Activate. But I'm going to finish this answer. The thing I'm most proud about of our organization and our staff in 2024, outside of everything I just listed, is that we announced and launched a brand new marathon.
That's right.
Just a couple of months ago that will take the place of the Rock and Roll Running Series going forward. After 16 years of hosting rock and roll here, San Antonio Sports will own the marathon going forward. It will be a destination marathon that sells the city even better, that invites everybody from around the world to come to a premier running event in San Antonio. Flat, fast course, will be a Boston qualifier, and it will be produced locally. And let's hope there's some revenue at the end of our first year, but the revenue and surplus dollars from this event will stay here locally to support those after-school programs, and those fitness programs that are free for the community. And we haven't been able to say that for 16 years with rock and roll. Like, great product. It started a lot of health and fitness journeys in San Antonio, and it's gotten a lot of people moving and active. I'm one of those. But, they come in and they leave on Sunday afternoon, and they take those dollars with them. Yeah. So it's going to stay here. And I'm really proud of that.
The financial impact, and then just the cultural impact in San Antonio is something to really look forward to. I mean, it will make a big difference. And the timing is great because I don't know where they all came from, but there are running groups all over the city, and those folks are to be applauded. I think it's amazing. Yeah. It's exciting when I see just, 40 people running down the street together. That is so
well. I think
cool.
That's a testament to what rock and roll has done for San Antonio. And I don't want to take anything away from the partnership we've had with them for 16 years. And our former city manager, Cheryl Scully, she was a big part of bringing in a national running group that really changed the culture here. And they deserve a ton of credit for that. But like all things, things come to an end, and there's a shelf life, and we grew up over the last 16 years. SanAntonioSports did.
Yes.
And it was time for us to grab an opportunity, and this is our future, to be able to do this for San Antonio and do this for people all over the world coming to San Antonio to run. And our big theme that we've been promoting the last few months is every step tells a story. And I think that's so important for not only this event, how you decide to register for this event, how you start your training for this event, but for our organization going into our next 40 years. Every step tells a story. And it might be adding basketball to All-Star Game, football. It might be, I don't know, taking on the next Final Four bid, and how do we do that with these conversations around a new downtown sports entertainment district. It might be expanding I Play After School, but every step that we take as an organization over the next 40 years will tell our story going forward.
Well, as the communications pro,
I did that. That was pretty good, right?
Yeah, that was real good. I like that. I mean, it is all about storytelling, and that's how you win over volunteers. That's how you win over participants. That's how you win over donors and sponsors, and so is by telling those stories.
And more importantly, how you keep all of those groups coming back.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate. We've had, long, as I mentioned earlier, a long history of steady leadership in our organization. We've had terrific corporations that have been a part of San Antonio sports for a long time, but things evolve as they do. So what are you looking most forward to as we move beyond this 40th anniversary and into the next, let's not go 40 years. I mean,
I think just focusing on our 3 to 5 to 10 year plan for the organization and growing and expanding what is already working very well for the community. But just like the marathon, how can we think outside of the box, knowing that sponsorship dollars are harder to come by, funding is harder to come by, grants are harder to come by. So how can we make our own magic to continue the benefits of what we bring to this community, and how can we do them even at a higher level when we know we've got to raise our own money to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't fall from the sky.
It does not fall from the sky. And I think that's always, that this, Mary, will always be one of our biggest challenges, no matter what the year is, what the projects, what the events we have on our schedule, is that people don't see us as a nonprofit, and they don't see us as a cause. So, people want to donate to the food bank, to make sure people have a meal on their table every night.
And they should.
As they should, yes, and I do. And they want to donate to the Cancer Association and the Diabetes Association. But I think the biggest message for us that we cannot share enough in this community is we are a preventative cause. We are a preventative nonprofit. So come do a 5K with us. Come train for the marathon with us.
Come take a yoga class.
Come take a yoga class.
Yeah.
Come take a Zumba hit class. I mean, any class you want, we have it, and it's all free. And I'm looking right into the camera when I say it. It's all free. So, don't worry about what's coming next. If you take care of yourself right now and start that health and fitness and mental wellness journey, we can be that preventative nonprofit.
We can affect change.
We
do.
Change.
And we've got the data points
and we
to show
absolutely
it.
do.
Yeah.
We can start a kid on the right path in third grade because they're focused on being in practice every day after school in their after school program and not going home and doing something else. We are keeping them focused. And I say this every time I go out and talk to groups, you never know when you're going to impact a kid. You just, you try to, you think about it a lot, you talk about it a lot, but you never know when one free basketball will change a kid's life.
Yeah.
Or a volleyball or a tennis racket or a golf club. I mean, I'm not trying to be, I'm a basketball junkie, but it doesn't matter what it is. But if you can change a life, you can change an entire network of family members and generational impact.
That is for sure. And we've seen it. We've seen it. We've got the stories.
Yep.
So just kind of for 2025, it's going to be a big year.
Biggest year in our organization's history.
It really will be. So we've got the men's Final Fours coming up April 4th through 7th in downtown San Antonio. You can go to finalfoursanantonio.com and learn all about it. There's so many wonderful events and programs outside of the games. The games are going to be spectacular. Yeah. We don't know who the Final Four are yet. That's always the funniest question. Who's going to be the Final Four? I don't know. I won't until right beforehand. But there's so many events, and we just want San Antonio to take advantage of all of those things. But we've got also, I mean, as you said, high school all-star basketball games coming up. We've got Corporate Cup. We've got the San Antonio Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Every play after school tournament. We don't stop even when we have a big event like the Final Four. And of course, we'll culminate 2025 with our inaugural San Antonio marathon, SATX marathon. And we're really excited about that. But I think this is a launching pad for our next 40 years. And it's really cool to think about that. Honestly, this is the biggest year in our organization's history, and it comes on the tail end of the 40th, going into what's next for us. So I can't think of a better way to do 2025.
It's going to be kind of a big year for me too. That last quarter when I step into the chair, I'll be chair of the board of directors, and I mean, I can't. I'm excited for it. It's going to be. It's a big role, and I appreciate the support of our board. But man, I mean, we got a lot going on.
You're coming in at the right time.
Yeah.
And I think that's another testament to the transformation of our organization and where we go from here. Is Mary, you're going to be our first female board chair in 40 years, which is ridiculous. Because, and I say that because we've really been a predominantly female-led organization at the staff level. But to do that at a more, board corporate level, I think is so important. And the time is now. And we need to be more diverse, and we need to just think about how we do things differently going forward. And this is a step in the right direction.
Well, I'm excited about it. In my board member role, I need to remind folks there are ways you can engage with San Antonio Sports. Certainly, we'd love you to volunteer. We still need volunteers for the Final Four. I mean, volunteering is front lines, man. It's fun. You get to see all the things. Plus, you always get some cool swag.
The cool gear. Maybe not the shirt.
Cool swag. We want you to participate. Register for all those free programs we were just talking about. If your children are in schools where I Play After School is available to them, and we're always trying to expand that number, engage in that. It's a remarkable thing. But now here's the board member thing. Donate. We really need folks to, and every bit counts, whether it's a $25 donation or a $25,000 corporate give or from a foundation, much more than that. We we are good stewards.
Well, and I would thank you as a board member for saying that. I would kind of end with saying, and I'm so glad we're done with our 40th. I don't want to say 40 for the next 11 months.
Exactly.
But if you've listened to a podcast, if you've come to an event this past year in 2024, if your kid played in an all-star game, if one of your kids is an iPlay after school student, if you've come to a free 5K, $40. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
If you've listened to this podcast one time, or if you listened to all 17 episodes that we've done, sorry, thank you. $40. I can't tell you how far that goes.
Yeah, it's remarkable. SanAntonioSports.org. But we cannot wrap up today without a few very heartfelt thank yous. We would not have been able to do this if it were not for the support from our board member, Mark Medici, who's the publisher of the San Antonio Express News. They have hosted us in this beautiful studio for every episode. Monty Bach, who is our producer, is pushing the buttons, and he has been absolutely wonderful, and his whole team has been fantastic. Absolutely could not have done this without Thomas Molina Robb, who is a Trinity University student and was the very best intern we could have ever had on this program. He just jumped into it with both feet and just did a stellar job. And also a shout out to another Trinity student who's my intern at Japhet Media, Sam Miller. She's amazing. She's always been the backup for everything too. So Thomas and Sam and Monty and Mark and the whole Express News team, we are sincerely grateful for all of your support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Mary, thank you. This has been a fun ride.
Thank you.
We might be back.
I don't know. This has been kind of fun.
I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to take 2025 off and go do this Final Four in this marathon.
Yeah, for sure.
But thank you for pushing me. This has, again, been a fun way to just capture our 40 years in a really fun way that people can go back to and listen to ongoing. Yeah. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
And
My pleasure.
I know we're wrapping it up, but give me your favorite moment. And then I'm going to say game on and thank you.
Okay. I don't know. Gosh, I think George setting us off on the right tone. But Bruce Bowen saying he tall was just...
That was it for you. Okay.
That made me laugh so hard. There were so many poignant moments, but that was just hilarious.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to finish.
It was really fantastic.
Well, on behalf of San Antonio Sports, thank you all for tuning in over the past year. More great things to come for this community, and we're grateful for your support. And as always, game on.
Thanks so much.